Hey everyone, welcome to Marketing for Designers podcast. I'm your host, Masha Cohen, a messaging strategist and a copywriter for the interior design industry. I've been marketing for what feels like forever in my past career at some of the biggest global firms like KPMG and Deloitte. Today, I write website copy for designers using my signature voice of customer framework. If you're a designer looking to up your marketing game and attract premium clients, this podcast is for you. Each week on the show, we're going to be talking all things marketing, from branding to messaging to social media, SEO, and so much more. So you can have all the tools you need to grow your business and attract your dream clients. All right, welcome back to Marketing for Designers podcast. So now that I've started this podcast, I'm always on the quest to find great guests that can speak to something relevant, interesting, super actionable, and something that really works, and not just in theory, but in practice. And I get especially excited when I find a marketing expert whose niche is design and build industry. And that means they know what designers and professionals in this space go through, what pain points they have. They know what works, what doesn't, and they know it from firsthand experience. So today we're talking about Google versus social media. Which one should designers pick to invest their time and money in? It's a juicy, juicy topic. And my guest today is Daniela Furtado, who is an owner of a boutique agency in Toronto, Canada, called Findable Digital Marketing. Her design uses search engines to help businesses quintuple, I don't know how to pronounce it, but substantially increase their website traffic and triple their sales inquiries. The agency specializes in design and build industry, helping clients make their businesses easily found online. Outside of the agency, Daniela teaches courses and writes about marketing. She enjoys making marketing less boring, technical, and mysterious, and instead gives it simplicity, creativity, and humor. What a great intro. Welcome to the show, Daniela.
Oh, thank you for that. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So Google versus social media. I'm so excited to hear what you have to say on this subject, and I am excited to learn from you. I have a feeling the answer to this is not as straightforward as we want it. It never is. So why don't you just kick us off? But before we do that, what do we mean by Google, just for our listeners' sake? Are we talking about like SEO, blog writing, Google ads, or all of the above?
Yeah, I think it would be all of the above. When I am on a sales call or I'm at a conference and speaking to designers, builders, furniture manufacturers, anyone that's in this industry, and they are starting marketing for the first time, I always get this question. Everyone says it slightly differently, but essentially what people are asking me is, how do I create a marketing strategy and which channels do I focus on? Should I focus on social media or should I focus on Google? Should I focus on my website being easy to find on Google with organic or paid ads, or should I be putting my effort into Instagram or Pinterest? Everyone fundamentally wants to know where they should be spending their time and energy or money if you're paying to be there. So yeah, I think Google, whether it's organic or paid, that's I think what people mean.
Yeah, all of those things. And that's definitely the same question that I keep getting from everyone, all the designers. And because, there's so many experts out there and everyone has their own theory. And us all, service providers, designers, even copywriters and other service providers, we're like, okay, where do I invest? Where do I spend my money? Where do I spend my time? What should I do?
Mm-hmm.
So I'd love to hear your perspective on that. So what should we consider first when we're kind of starting to think about marketing, whether you're just starting out or you've done some marketing, some tactics, maybe strategic, maybe not so much, but where should we start?
So I actually think we should be asking a completely different question. We shouldn't be asking, should I focus on social media or Google? Which one is easier or better? I think we should be asking the question, where are my customers? And if you answer that question, then that will give you the answer that you need to know. So starting with, who are my customers? Where are they, online and offline? Where do they spend their time? Which platforms are they using? How do they make decisions, buying decisions? Then everything else will fall into place. When you can answer those fundamental questions about your target customers, then you'll know where you should be putting your marketing budget, which platforms you should be using, how you should use them, how much time and money you should invest in each one.
That's a really good point. Is there something that can help designers kind of figure that part out? Because I have a feeling it's not as simple, and they may not know where to look for that type of information. And sometimes it's not as straightforward as asking them, well, where do we hang out? Or,
Yep.
how do you make those decisions? What do you tell your clients, and how do you help them figure it out?
Yeah, I think it starts with asking first the question, like, why did you start this business? What do you want to be known for? And that will help us identify, like, okay, do you do commercial or residential work? And if either one, like, what does that mean, right? There's a difference between doing retail versus hospitality, and they're both considered commercial. So I think first identifying, what do you as a business want to be known for? What kind of work do you want to keep doing more of? What do you want to focus on? Because when you start your business, a lot of people are just willing to do a little bit of everything. They just want to get started and be able to be in a position to have creative control of the projects that they take on, how they do it, the hours that they work, the freedom. I mean, everyone has different reasons, but it's typically related to that, right? And then as time goes on, you say yes a little bit less often. You start to notice patterns of what you're good at, what you enjoy doing, the kind of properties you like working with, the clientele, the services that you're good at. You get better, or at least you start saying no a little bit more. It's a little bit more refined, and you can answer that question. What do I want to be known for? So when you answer that question, that brings you to the question of like, okay, so how do you get more of those types of projects? Who are those people that are hiring you? So if it is that you want to do hospitality design, that's what you really enjoy, you want to do more of those projects. Okay, then we ask, okay, who's hiring interior designers for restaurants? Is it a restaurant owner? Is it the general manager? Or is it even bigger if you're working with chains, like some sort of procurement department? So when we identify the kind of projects that we want to do, then we can identify who the decision makers and target customers are. And then we can go on to ask those questions like, okay, who are these people? What are their job titles? How much money do they make? Maybe if it's residential, where are they located? Where are they at to make a decision to hire an interior designer? Are they opening a new location, or are they renovating their current location? Like, why are they hiring an interior designer at this time and place? You can probably tell from my answer or how I'm explaining it, it's kind of like a domino effect, right? Once you ask one question, it leads to another question that's even more specific than the last.
Yeah, absolutely. So you start putting together this kind of like a profile of an ideal client. And that's where I guess you kind of peel that onion and try to understand, okay, well, who they are, how do they make decisions, who are other like secondary decision making partners or stakeholders in that equation. So that's your starting point. What you're saying is that you're putting together this profile.
Yeah.
Right. Where do we go next from here?
I always recommend having some sort of Google Doc. It's a living document that you update every time you have a new interaction or learn more information about your target customer. I start with who are they? Where are they? What are they currently going through? What are their current problems or pain points? Why are they interested in your services? What is the solution that they're looking for? And what's the risk if they don't hire you? So those top 5 questions is what I start with, but you might find more information as you interact with them as time goes on that don't quite fit those 5 questions, but are still insightful for you to keep in mind when you're interacting with them. What ultimately you're looking for is patterns. Every time you speak to maybe every 5 of your target customers, you start to pick up on patterns, maybe the language that they're using, the mannerisms, the concerns that they have. That's all information you want to keep note of, and it will help you in some shape or form with your sales and marketing. Now, if you want to get super detailed, you can build out what we call an online customer journey and start to illustrate that for that target customer. Do you want me to go into detail about that?
I would love that. But first of all, what a great idea to have a Google Doc. I would imagine this is like an ever evolving document. And I recommend the same thing. And actually the questions that you mentioned, that's such a great idea. And I especially love the 5th question, the risk if they don't hire you. What a lot of people don't realize that, like, for example, when you hire a copywriter, and I write website copy for my interior design clients, and these are the questions that I actually ask during the interview process, because eventually at the end of the day, the client insights that I collect, that's what informs the copy, because when, you know, ideally your copy actually speaks to those pain points and those risks and the objections that people have. So an amazing idea to have that Google Doc. And I'm excited to hear what's next, like the customer and buyer journey. Let's definitely get into it.
Yeah. Yeah. So what we're trying to summarize, and this is an oversimplification, right? Because it's hard to summarize people, a large group of people, and all the nuances in just one Google Doc. But what we're trying to do is look for patterns and try to understand the point A to B roadmap. Like, where are they now? Where do they want to be? And what's in between? What's holding them back? What are the doubts, questions, and concerns in between? Understanding that, being able to summarize big picture that information, those patterns, will help you create what we call an online customer journey. Again, this is an oversimplification. It's going to sound a lot more straightforward and linear than what it really is, but it's to help us understand patterns. So let's say I'm going to illustrate an example. Let's say someone just purchased a home. It's their dream home. They just spent their whole life savings buying this house. They value design and they want to redesign or renovate the home. So the first thing that they do is they probably go to Pinterest, social media, online, maybe magazines, ask their friends and family, looking for ideas on how to go about this renovation. But they might search for keywords like home renovation inspiration, minimalist home ideas, tips and tricks. So you can tell from the language that they're not really interested in hiring someone or buying anything. They are looking to gain awareness of this new world. They want to know what they like, what they don't like. They want to start brainstorming ideas and start envisioning what their dream home is going to look like. And that's what we call this stage. When people are at the very beginning of this journey, we call it the awareness stage. There are a lot of people in this stage. So when we're looking at the data for these keywords, you know, how many people are searching these types of keywords on Google, they're usually in the tens or hundreds of thousands. So a lot of people are searching for ideas, tips and tricks, inspiration type of keywords, but the intent to buy is very low. The likelihood of someone in this stage going to hire an interior designer is very, very low. So let's say someone is in this stage, they have an idea of what they want, and they decide, okay, I'm going to try to do these renovations myself. So they might try DIYing, but then realize, oh, this is very overwhelming. This is a lot of work. I don't have the eye for this. I don't have the time for it. So then they start to consider hiring a professional, but they've got questions. How long does it take? How much time does it cost? What do I need a permit for? Do I need a permit? Will a renovation like this increase the value of the home by the time I sell it? They've got all these questions. Maybe they have very specific needs, like maybe they have a family member in a wheelchair or with autism, and they want to design the home to accommodate those needs. Maybe they want to use biophilic design in their home, whatever it may be, right? Or maybe it's a heritage home. Maybe it's like very specific to the property, like maybe it's a heritage home and they have to respect certain codes. People at this stage have a lot of questions. And so they're typically at this stage, they're looking at Google for sure, asking these questions on Google, but they could also be reading articles in magazines, listening to podcasts, reading forums, joining Facebook groups, of course, asking their peers, but they're really trying to educate themselves. And in this stage, we see there are fewer people. Again, if we look at the keyword data of how many people are searching for these types of questions, the numbers drop, but the intent to hire a designer or a professional to help them is very, very high. It's much higher than the awareness stage. And some people...
Danielle, I was just about to ask you, but in this consideration stage, so this is actually very interesting. In this consideration stage, do you find, like from your experience, do you find that there like a little bit of both worlds, where people that still want to do it themselves and they're just trying to get more information? Or as you said, you know, the intent to buy is a lot higher, so they're now also considering hiring someone. Is that like a mix of both?
It could be, yeah. Like I said, this is an oversimplification and people go into all different directions. This journey is assuming that at the end, the person is going to purchase or hire an interior designer. So that's why I'm kind of wording it like we're working backwards, but that might lead a person to just buying the material themselves and DIYing, right? We're not quite sure how they end. We hope that they hire you.
We hope, yeah.
Yeah, but at this consideration stage, it's very mixed. Yeah, they're not sure. They haven't made a decision. They're exploring their options.
Okay. So there's now we've covered awareness and consideration. What's the third
And
one?
I would say this is the last one. Some people might decide, like you mentioned, right? They might decide to DIY it themselves, and they end up going to Home Depot and buying the material and being Home Depot's customer. Or they may decide to hire a professional, hire an interior designer specifically to help them. And so they go within their personal network asking for referrals. They may go to a directory, like House, or they go to Google and they search interior designer near me or interior designer for Heritage Home, interior designer Toronto, whatever it may be. And these keywords are, the volume is much lower. The number of people searching for this is much lower, but the intent to buy is extremely high. They're quite serious about hiring a professional. And so when you think about your target customer, I encourage people to work backwards and imagine the phases that their target customer went through or is going through in each stage. When they get to the purchase stage, what kind of language are they using to find a service provider like you? When they were in when they are in the consideration stage, what are the common questions, doubts, hesitations, concerns that they have? And where are they probably going to answer those questions and look for that information? And then the same with the awareness stage. If you can try to illustrate what each stage looks like, oh my gosh, there's so much information and marketing decisions you can make based on that. And you're not going to, like we said, right? It's a living document. So every time you have a sales call or learn more information about your target customers, you can add more information to this. But all this information tells you, okay, which platform should I be going to? Okay, so if I'm going to social media, if I'm using social media, I'm not going to expect that my social media followers to be in the purchase stage. No, they're in the awareness stage and they're looking specifically for ideas and inspiration. So I'm going to give them very visual content or ideas. I'm not going to probably go into the nitty gritty about like costs or very nuanced information. I can, right? But you're limited with social media. It's short form content. So you have to really simplify. But you see how it works. Like we're actually working backwards. We're not starting with the question, oh, which platform should I be and what should I talk about? It's, oh, okay, who do I want to target? And when people are at that stage, what are they going through? And then I decide the platform and the type of content that I'm putting up accordingly.
And I feel like it depends a lot on where your clients are. Like, for example, an interior design, like a more seasoned interior designer, more experienced interior designer, maybe and correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe most of their clients kind of come from are in the consideration and purchase stage of awareness, right? And they're not there. Like I shouldn't say not a lot, but not everyone starts with, okay, I'm going to do it myself. So I need to collect as much information. Some people already know. And that's what I'm finding through these client interviews. They're like, okay, like I knew I wasn't going to do it myself. So right away, I know that I just want to hire someone. It's a matter of selecting who to hire, right? So it matters where, like at which stage of awareness your ideal client is.
For sure. Some people might stay in one stage for months and then jump to another. Some people jump between stages, back and forth. Or like you said, they go directly to one stage. They skip the other two. So yeah, it's not always linear. This is an oversimplification. The point is for you, the business owner, to think differently, to think about your marketing in a more client-centric way instead of a platform-centric way. And you know this, that interior designers is not a service that we like hire for every month or every year. A lot of people may only hire an interior designer once, max twice in their life. Commercial is a different story. So it would make sense for an interior designer to always be there when someone is in the purchase stage, but also to make a presence in the consideration stage, to make themselves known so that when someone is making that once in a lifetime decision to hire an interior designer, they're top of mind. But this also really depends on your marketing budget. If you're just starting out, you don't you got to focus on the purchase stage. You need that low hanging fruit. You need your marketing efforts to translate pretty quickly. But when you have a larger portfolio, you have a larger team, and you can put more resources, time, and effort into marketing, that's when you can move up the funnel or move up the journey and target people in the consideration or even the awareness stage. I think the biggest mistake that interior designers make, or small businesses in general, is they look at big companies that have entire marketing departments that are targeting all people in all three stages, right? Sharon Williams is targeting people in the purchase, consideration, and awareness stage because they have the money and the people to do so. Small businesses see that and they try to mimic that marketing strategy, not realizing like you're in a completely different place in that corporation. You can't mimic the same strategies and approaches they're taking. It's like someone that just started practicing Taekwondo trying to do the same things as someone with a black belt did. It's like, no, you got to go through the phases. You're not there yet. And so, yeah, when you're a small business and you're just starting doing your marketing, I really encourage people to focus on the purchase and the consideration stage, and really, like, I don't want to say don't do social media altogether, but really adjust your expectations and your resources accordingly. Don't expect the social media and the awareness stage to close sales for you.
That's such a great point. I love that you said that. And a lot of businesses, that's true. A lot of businesses try to compare themselves to, like, if we're talking about interior designers, they're looking at other more seasoned interior designers. Even in my questionnaires, I often see that. It's like, oh, okay, make me sound like that. And then they post an interior designer that's got, like, I don't know, 20 years of experience, and their target audience is so completely different. And their website copy is very kind of like topical. It doesn't really go into a lot of questions because they've got the brand awareness is already there. They don't need to do much work to kind of sell the prospect on your brand and how you do things on your process. But that's a really great point. So would you consider, so if I understand you accurately, your kind of tip, and I understand that we are kind of oversimplifying and maybe generalizing in a lot of ways, but your advice would be to kind of start at the end and build the content in the purchase and consideration stage of awareness. And how would you say, should interior designers that are, let's say they've got 3 to 5 years of experience, should they have some content in each one of these buckets, or should they honestly just focus on consideration and purchase?
Awesome question. So actually, I think the kind of content you create is going to depend on each stage. So for example, let's say you want to target people in the purchase stage. I wouldn't say you're creating blog posts or social media posts, right? Because at this stage, people are looking to hire a service professional. And like using your words, it's not a matter of whether or not they're going to hire someone. It's just a matter of choosing the right person, choosing someone that aligns with their values. They like their aesthetic. Of course, budget is a big consideration, and process. So at this stage, people are, I think, they're looking for more the kind of content that you're going to see on a service page. So for this stage, for the purchase stage, you want to create a service page on your website, and you want to make it thorough, that it answers all those typical questions that people have, right? Who are you? What's the process? What is your starting rate? What's the next step? Like, do I book a call? Do I book an appointment? Do I submit a contact form and you email me? So at this stage, it's okay, make sure that you have, the classic pages, your home page, your portfolio page, a service page, and make sure that there's a clear call to action on next steps, like if that's a phone call or filling out a contact form. And then you can optimize those pages for Google so that you rank organically. So in this case, I'm just using an example, going back to the person that purchased a home. If that's your target customer, residential homeowner, then you're targeting the keyword probably interior designer or residential interior designer near me, or replace the word near me with whatever city they're in. And so you're optimizing your homepage, portfolio pages, and service page for those keywords so that you can come up on Google. The same goes for your Google Maps listing. And then if you want, you can back it up with ads. You can also look into directories if that makes sense for you. And so whenever someone is searching for an interior designer and they're going to a directory like Yellow Pages or House, you can create a listing and pay ads to get there. So that's the kind of content you would create in the purchase stage. The consideration stage.
I love that.
For the consideration stage, this is where I encourage people to really demonstrate your expertise and answer the common questions that your target customer has before they got to the purchase stage, before they make a decision. So I think case studies are really underutilized in the industry, and I encourage people to consider it. So everyone has a portfolio. In the industry, it's very common, and I think this is changing in the past few years, but it's really common for people to just have a photo gallery. And this is, I think, unfortunate or a weakness, because interior designers are often misunderstood. People don't know the difference between a designer and a decorator. And they say like a picture can tell 1,000 words, but is it the words that you want them to know or to hear? If someone looks at your portfolio and they look at your photos, they don't know what you did to the space unless you tell them. They don't know if you just added a pillow or you tear down a wall. And helping them understand what you did, but beyond just the picture, will help them understand what it is that you do, educate them the difference between a designer and a decorator, and understand the value of your services. So I really encourage designers or any sort of like creative professional to tell the stories behind their portfolio. You could add content to your portfolio pages. You can write a blog post or a case study and go into detail about the before, the during, the after. Share, who is this, who is the property owner? Why did they come to you? Is it a family? Is it an elderly couple? What exactly did you do for them? Walk us through the process. What was the approach that you took? Why did you make the decisions that you made? Show us photos of the construction process, snippets of the blueprints if possible. Of course, as a designer, you're going to need consent from your client to do all this, but walk us through the process and educate us. Tell the story behind the portfolio pieces. And while you're doing that, you're answering a lot of typical questions future customers will have in the consideration stage, instead of blatantly telling them like, oh, a renovation can take between 3 to 9 months. You can tell them a story of a renovation that they admire, that they like, and then answer those questions that way. So case studies or blog posts that tell the story behind your portfolio pieces are a great way to create content in the consideration stage. And then, of course, actual blog posts or guides that answer these common questions. Like if you specialize in heritage homes, create a guide on how to renovate a heritage home in different cities. If you specialize in cafe interior design, think about the typical questions restaurant owners have when they're renovating when they're renovating their cafe, like the psychology of cafe design, or renovating the FAQs when it comes to renovating a restaurant, or how do you renovate a restaurant when you have multiple locations? How do you keep the brand the same in all these different locations, but then also, make them unique to each city that they're in?
I'm so happy that you're bringing all of this up. And I really hope that listeners are taking a ton of notes, because I am. There's so many tips that you shared for the types of content that that you should be encouraged to share at each stage of the awareness during the consideration and purchase. I absolutely love that you brought up the case studies, because I feel like case studies is what we often talk about, like in the tech industries and not so much in the interior design industries. You don't see a lot of that. I have seen some effective ones that some interior designers have done, where, just like you said, they're talking about the problem, what you did and the solution. And you kind of you're taking this subtle approach to overcoming people's objections. Like, you're not blatantly telling them, this is how we overcome problems. No, you're just basically sharing a story, how you've done that. And in the mind of a prospect, they're seeing that, they're like, oh, okay, I kind of see myself in the shoes of that particular customer, because my situation may be very similar. So I absolutely love that. And I think a lot more designers should be doing that. And at the very least, creating a dedicated page for each project and even providing just like a bit of a description and not just what I typically see, like a project name, location, and that's about it. And then, people, website visitors are left to their own devices, kind of making up that narrative in their own head.
Yeah. And I say blog posts or written content because that's what we do the most, but the platform or the medium can change, but the point is the same, right? Like you said, it's like you're telling the story behind the project. It could be through a written case study or blog post. It could be a PDF. It could be a video as well. It could come in so many different formats, but the message is the same. And yeah, I'm surprised that I don't see more interior designers or even architects do it, but the design profession does it. Like industrial and designers are very good at putting together case studies and telling the story behind their portfolio. Graphic designers do a great job as well. It's not just, I think, the business world, like tech companies or marketing and advertising agencies. Designers do it. It's not a foreign idea. So yeah, I would love to see more interior designers do it. I think it's changing. I'm seeing more designers and architects hire communications professionals and make these changes. There's one architect firm in Australia that they're really clever. They got a really unique brand voice, and they can be a little bit cheeky, but they have a great way to creating case studies. It's called Maytree Studios, and they create written case studies for each portfolio piece, and they create videos. So they're doing a great job. If any of the listeners want to
Oh,
see an
that's cool. How
example.
do you spell that?
Maytree, Maytree Studios. Their
Awesome.
case studies are not optimized for search. So, but that's maybe that's an advanced tip, right? Just start creating case studies, get into the habit of it. And then once you've got a good flow, then you can learn how to actually use them to get traffic by themselves. You can optimize them for search. You can use them in some sort of like email newsletter campaign. You can break them up and create social media posts. What I love the most about the consideration stage, it is so rich. You can create so much long form content and then break it up for the awareness stage. But the consideration, coming up with ideas for content or marketing material in the consideration stage, is very difficult if your target customer is not specific enough. It's very easy to be very generic, and then the content doesn't stand out in the consideration stage. When you can get really, really specific with your target customers, whoa, the consideration stage can be so fascinating, and so just really cool content ideas can come out of that. And cool content ideas is important to stand out, because this is obviously a lot of work to create, and it'd be a pity that you put all this work into creating a piece of content, hit publish, and then no one notices it. That happens when the idea is a little bit too generic. But if you can get really specific, it will stand out and attract exactly the kind of people you want to attract.
Yeah, and I feel like the fear is for interior designers that they're just scared to niche down. They're scared. They're scared that they're gonna deter all the other wrong fit or ill fit clients, which is what we want to do at the end of the day. But people are always scared to really narrow down their
Yeah.
target audience, and But if you're just positioning yourself as like an interior designer in Toronto, you know chances are it's way too generic. You're not zeroing in on the exact client that you want to attract. So definitely spend more time in that profile stage and really identifying who is that ideal client that I
Yeah.
want to work with, or what kind of projects that I want to work with.
Can I comment a little bit more? I think that's a great point that you brought. Can I comment a little bit more on that, on this fear of specializing?
Of course, yeah.
I hear the same thing too, and I get it. Before I started to specialize, it was very scary for me as well. I thought that I would be pigeonholing myself and saying no to opportunities. But I've learned just from my own experience and working with clients that specialize, that your efforts go so much further when you do specialize, and you make it a lot easier for people to remember who you are and what you do, which makes it easier for word to go around, right? Like if you start to build a reputation or a name, because that's what it really comes down to, is like making it easier for yourself to build a reputation and building that reputation as quickly as possible. So it's easier to build a reputation when you make it super easy for people to remember who you are. So if you build a reputation as being the go-to designer or architect for dental clinics, that's so unique. That stands out, that sticks in people's head. But if you do dental clinics, hair salons, residential, that's hard for people to remember. It's not going to stand out. It seems very counterintuitive, but it really if you can take the leap, get over the fear, make that big decision once to specialize, I think it really does pay off. But there is a transition period. Like there is this awkward period when especially with designers, because it takes such a long time for you to finish projects and really realize that expertise. You know what I mean? Like you could have 5 dental clinics that you work with today, but you're not going to be able to finish those projects, photograph them, put it on your site, and claim yourself to be an expert in designing dental offices until a year or two from now. And so that in between, you have this weird period, it's very awkward, and there's no like way around it. It's just kind of the nature of being in this industry, having a business in this industry. So I would say to people, it's like, okay, you kind of have to balance between your long-term goals and your short-term needs. Short-term, you don't want to say no to projects that are outside of the specialization that you're working towards. But if you put everything on your website and your marketing material, then it's going to get messy. You're not going to build that reputation. So what I tell people is choose a specialization for at least your external communications. So pick a specialization and have that all over your website, your social media, whatever it may be. But behind closed doors, you can take on projects that are not within those specialization. Just be mindful that they're serving your short-term needs, but they're not serving your long-term needs. So maybe that means that you have to be a little bit picky with them. If a project is not a good budget, like it's not going to be very profitable and it's going to take a lot of time, and it doesn't serve your specialization, maybe that's enough of a reason to say no to it. So it's like you start to have to develop like a checklist and a number, like, okay, it's got to fit 3 out of 5 needs. And if it's anything less, then I'm not going to work with it because it's not fulfilling my short-term and my long-term needs. You know what I mean?
100%. And I absolutely love that you talked about, pick your specialty and then make it front and center on your website and in all of your marketing communications. Because I think what a lot of interior designers do not realize is if they pick a lane, if they pick a specialty, then that's it. They can't work with anyone else. But that's not true at all. All you do is when you pick a specialty, when you become the go-to or you become known for something, it just makes your life easier as far as marketing. Then you pick that thing and that's what you talk about in your marketing and on your website. But like you said, behind closed doors, feel free to say yes to the projects that you're excited about, even if they're outside of the expertise that you've picked. Like I'm a copywriter for interior designers, but I still work with other, providers, other service providers outside of the interior design industry. I just don't market. I just don't promote that. But my marketing speaks to like only to interior design industry. But that doesn't mean that I don't work on projects outside of that niche.
Yeah, everyone talks about niching down and specializing and how important it is, and everyone talks about the theory about it, but no one really talks about how you actually do it. Like, what are the steps that you take? And I wish I heard more people say that it takes years. It honestly takes years to get to a place where you can truly be confident in saying that you specialize in blank. It takes years for your whole website to scream it, your portfolio, for your operations. It is something like you got to go through it in phases. And so I think the goal should be that like 80, 90, even 100% of your business revolves around that specialization, but it's not going to happen in a month. It's going to take years to get there. So it's like, steps that you take towards, and I wish more people talked about that transition period and like the practical, what people actually do to work towards that specialization. Because I thought it was like a 3 month thing, it's like it's like a
Hmm.
box that you check and then you move on. Being in business, I've learned exercising is part of your lifestyle. I think like specializing is like a business style. It's like a whole approach to business. It's not just this like wrapping paper that you wrap a box around. It is the box and the paper at the same time.
I love it. I love it. And so important to consider that and be realistic with your expectations in terms of how long it's going to take. I love it. And I agree with you. It's not that you just wake up one day, even though that's that's what I say to people, that I just woke up one day and I started calling myself an interior design copywriter. But the truth is that so many things had to evolve and transition. And in my
Right.
marketing, on my website is not even updated yet. That's just to tell you how
Yeah.
long it's taken. Like, I'm just updating it now 4 years later after I've transitioned into being like full-time for interior designer. So yeah, it does take time, and you got to be realistic with your expectations and what are the phases within it. You just gave me like an awesome idea for another podcast episode, like the phases of niching.
Oh, you could have so many episodes about it. But yeah, you're right. Like it's one thing to say it, but then it takes time for it to actually come to fruition, for you to walk that talk in everything that you do, right? Like, yeah, you could update your website, but then maybe you would like to have more portfolio pieces to prove it, right? Like it takes a while
Hmm.
to make sure that your whole wardrobe speaks to that specialization. It's not just a hat you wear, but the entire
Exactly.
outfit.
Well, I love that. On that note, Danielle, I feel like this content resonates and like all of your tips resonate with so many people. If designers wanted to work with you or hire you or just talk to you and maybe follow you, where can my listeners find you?
I put out an email newsletter every month that I'm super proud of. The topics are topics like this. There are things that I think about in the shower when it comes to all things marketing for design and build. I'm very proud of it. I spend a lot of time writing it. My team helps me edit and poke holes at it. And then we have an illustrator turn every piece of content into like a custom drawing, a custom illustration. So we put a lot of love and care into it. And that's if you want to, hear what I'm thinking about that month, then I really encourage people to join the email newsletter. So it's just go to findabledigitalmarketing.com/newsletter and you can sign up that way. Otherwise, I spend a little bit of time on LinkedIn, not much on Instagram, or yeah, but yeah, email newsletter all the way.
Awesome. I'll make sure to link it in the show notes. And Daniela, one last question that I often ask my guests: is there a habit or a practice that you adapted that has been a game changer in your life or in your
Yeah,
business?
I think any sort of practices related to reflection has been a really important habit for me in my personal and business life, but specifically in business. Every Friday, I have a business journal. So there are a set of questions that I ask myself every week. Things like, what's our revenue this year to date? How many sales inquiries do we have? But I also go through this like rose, thorn, bud model. So I ask myself, what were the highlights this week? The roses. What were the challenges this week? The thorns. And the bud, what am I looking forward to? And those help me reflect on the wins, the challenges, and it's like dedicated time to think about the problems in the business and think of actionable solutions to implement like right away. And we do that as well with every project. So at the end, or actually with long-term projects in the middle of every project, we meet as a team and we have what we call retrospectives. So same idea, there's like a set of questions that we typically ask ourselves and have a guided conversation about, what went well, what didn't go well, and how can we improve for the future? What do we have to do we have to change something about our processes or communication style or something on our website, whatever it is. So I find though that like carving out time to reflect and have these retrospectives either alone as a team have inspired a lot of really productive changes in the company and in my life too, personally.
Amazing. I wrote it down. Rose, thorns, and buds, and retrospective. I love that. That's such a good thing. I think all of us should be doing reflection after every project, or maybe a little bit like every quarter or something. But it's so important to reflect on what works, what doesn't, and what improvements we should be making in our
Well,
businesses.
thank you so much for having me. I really
Love it.
appreciate it. This is a great conversation. I could talk about this for not hours, for days.
Love it. Thanks so much, Daniela, for everything that you shared today. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Marketing for Designers. This is Masha Cohen signing off. See you next week.